Genocide and famine have been declared in Gaza. A ceasefire has not. 20 hostages are still alive in the enclave, and yet the violence increases. TikTok is important because it has first-hand accounts from Gaza, and that has become more and more rare since Israeli attacks have killed hundreds of journalists in the region. Of all the main social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X, TikTok is a platform that is the youngest, the most liberal, and the most pro-Palestinian. And that's why Israel's prime minister wants it.
We're going to have to use the tools of battle. You know, the weapons change over time. And the most important ones are social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential.
Benjamin Netanyahu made that comment while meeting with American influencers at the Israeli embassy in New York last week. He wants to control the narrative. He has some help. HBO is releasing a new miniseries called One Day in October. It's based on the biggest and deadliest attack in Israel's history. It premieres on October 7th. Another new miniseries called Red Alert is a 4-part dramatization. It also premieres on the second anniversary of the Hamas-led attacks. Now, back to TikTok. On September 25th, Donald Trump signed an executive order forcing the platform to sell its American operations. A group of investors is being led by Oracle founder Larry Ellison. Responsible Statecraft wrote, quote, Ellison and a constellation of billionaires will finally get their way, buying the very app they wanted to kill a year ago for being too pro-Palestinian. Last month, Ellison was one of 6 Jewish billionaires that the Jerusalem Post called the backbone of Israel's wartime funding. TRT World has more on the implications.
Critics say this takeover is not just about national security, it's about controlling narratives. With campaigners warning of an Israelification of TikTok where moderation rules and algorithmic tweaks could tilt the platform in Israel's favor, muting pro-Palestine voices that, since October 2023, have been critical in exposing Israel's genocidal war on Gaza. What started as a fight between Washington and Beijing over data has turned into something much bigger, a battle over narratives, censorship, and who controls the global conversation on Palestine.
And so amid social media changing owners and media consolidation, some worry about the future of free speech. Comedian Bassem Youssef deactivated his account on X last year, citing safety concerns related to his posts about Gaza. Here's what he had to say last week.
The problem is much deeper than Donald Trump, because it's the broadcaster. Now you have people, because they say, oh, you have free speech, you can say whatever you want, but not on my platform. And you see now our platforms being bought one by one. Larry Ellison, he's buying NBC, Paramount,
maybe CNN, TikTok. Yeah.
It's not because of Trump, but those billionaires are forever. And now, and I think we are being censored on these platforms, the same platform being protesting, and we are all now being part of this machine.
And all this as news consumption continues to change. Pew Research Center published data last week showing more and more Americans are getting their news on social media. Last year, Pew found that 1 in 5 Americans get specifically their news from influencers or content creators. Let's speak to 2 of them now on how they see TikTok's future. Raymond Way is a co-founder and director of the Conscious Citizens NGO, and Sean Jojo van Valkenburg, I hope I said that correctly, is a big tech and data policy educator. Thank you for each of you speaking to Scoop. Ray, I want to begin with you. The deal isn't finalized yet. Early efforts to save TikTok have panned out, but it is popular. It is influential. Are you concerned about TikTok's future?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think TikTok has been instrumental, not just in Palestine, but even local organizing here in the U.S. And it's been a critical tool for people to get connected to each other. So, and for people to get a better sense of what the wider world is like and what's really happening in other countries. So I'm definitely concerned. And I think, now that TikTok it seems like the deal is going to be, a specifically U.S. app with a specifically U.S. algorithm that is specifically designed with the approval of the U.S. State Department, I think we're going to see a very, very different TikTok. And it's not going to be the place of free speech and free expression that we've seen and have enjoyed for years until now.
Yeah, and Ray, real quickly, just for our viewers that aren't familiar with the platform, what makes TikTok distinct from some of the other main social media?
Yeah, so the thing about TikTok that makes it the most unique is probably its algorithm. So its algorithm was one of the first ones on social media that really took advantage of machine learning technology, or probably what is more popularly known or commonly known as AI technology, to really fine tune its algorithm to be able to serve people content that is exactly what they are interested in. A lot of people use TikTok and they're amazed that it learns exactly what they like, sometimes even before they know what they like. And that is really the unique feature of TikTok that has allowed, popular movements and grassroots movements to really take shape and to gain traction on that platform as opposed to others.
Yeah, it kind of creates that doom scrolling we all know so much about. Sean, this is just speculation, but how do you think Larry Ellison would juggle financial interests versus political interests?
That's a really difficult thing to say. I think when it comes to TikTok, a lot of people want to keep the algorithm, and he might have an obligation to keep what we currently have, or an illusion of that. A lot of people are saying that he might transform the algorithm and completely lose people's interest in using the platform, wanting to invest in it. And I believe that that's going to happen. It will happen over a longer period of time. We might not be losing the TikTok we think we are immediately.
And if it does change so much, do you think we'd see a boycott of TikTok?
Oh, definitely. I think, especially with TikTok the way we know it now, TikTok is very effective, especially with machine learning, at putting people that we are interacting with in front of one another, mobilizing, organizing, being very effective, but also pushing people off the platform when they know they're being censored and having to use codes of speech to get around that. I think when it comes to censorship, we do worry about it not just being about TikTok censorship, but who will now be able to get to decide what gets censored on TikTok. And we don't have an answer for what that will be until it happens.
Ray, I know you're passionate about media literacy, and I think that's one of the things that anyone who's using social media should be concerned about is the evolving landscape in the United States. So, Ray, with all the media consolidation in the United States right now, and now this change of ownership of TikTok, and before that X, why do you think all of that's occurring right now?
Well, I think, the phrase, he who controls the flow of information controls the masses, I think is very relevant in this situation. I think we have to understand the role of the media in this interconnected age that we live in is to give us a better sense of the wider world and what is really happening out there. And social media has really filled the gap that mainstream media has left once mainstream media networks in the US have been consolidated into the hands of just about 6 billionaires. Social media, we've seen through Twitter and the effect it had on the Arab Spring in the 2010s. And now with Palestine on TikTok, I think we see that their social media has a massive power to disrupt narratives, especially narratives that the state wants to promote. So I think, what we all have to understand is that, as scholars like Chomsky have pointed out, a centralized media is exactly what's needed to manufacture consent for endless wars in the Middle East, for genocide, and various other policies that are clearly and obviously unpopular to most people. So what we have to understand is that, this acquisition is less about data security or national security, as they want to say. It is about narrative control. It's about being able to have control over what the U.S. people are seeing, are reading, are watching, and therefore affecting their behavior, because that all fundamentally affects how they view the wider world and essentially their view of reality. And really, it's about controlling that and being able to rein back in, what has been the support that's been lost for Israel on both sides of the aisle. It's no longer left or right, as Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADL said. Israel doesn't have a left or right problem. It has a Gen Z TikTok problem. And that means that, 77 years of propaganda from Israel has essentially been destroyed in the past 2 years. And now we see them scrambling to, get the tools that they need, as Netanyahu said, in order to rehabilitate the Israeli image, following 2 years of a live stream genocide.
Sean, just to play devil's advocate here, anyone who controls these social media are going to control the narrative. And by virtue of these platforms being so large, the owners have to be billionaires. But should they have any responsibilities for how they manage these apps? Or since it's their company, should they be able to do as they see fit?
I believe that there should be several layers of oversight. When we see billionaires owning these companies and it being consolidated to a very little number of them, a very small handful of them, we should all be concerned no matter what form that comes in, especially when we look at what interest is this serving. Is this more of a public interest or is this more of a private interest? What is really happening behind the scenes? And is there a concentration of influence that we should be poking more at? A lot of times the dissent around this is censored, and we really have a hard time getting direct answers to this. I think the takeaway for this is that billionaires should not really have this much control over applications, and especially pushing people out who dissent is not going to help this in any way possible, especially for the people in Palestine, Congo, and Tigray.
Right. Ray, real quickly, in regards to censorship, have you seen anything change since January or more recently?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think, when the TikTok app went offline in January, there's a clear kind of night and day difference. I think, it's always really hard to tell what are the kind of levers that are being pulled behind the scenes, but, we can kind of feel changes in the algorithm, at least for myself. Prior to January of this year, I was maybe averaging around like 30 or 40,000 views per video. And now I'm lucky to maybe get over, 1 to 2,000 per video. And it's not even that the videos were being completely taken off or flagged for inappropriate reasons as they were before. Now it's just not at all even being served through the algorithm and onto people's For You feeds, which functionally is the same effect. And that's kind of been universally felt across all the creators that I know who are creating content in support of the Palestinian people and advocating for Palestinian lives. They've all had a pretty universal experience of being demonetized or just simply not shown through the algorithm when they're talking about Palestine specifically. And there's actually a thing that people do to kind of clear the algorithm or do an algorithm refresh where they'll just post something completely unpolitical, completely not related to Palestine. And you see the night and day difference because those videos do incredibly well. And then they switch back to Palestine and it's back to the same story of being completely throttled. I
want to thank our guests, Sean and Ray, and that brings us to our quote of the week. Gentlemen, thank you for speaking to Scoop. It comes from the Professor Robert Reich, former labor secretary under Bill Clinton, and he said on X, quote, "The richest man on earth owns X. The second richest man on earth is about to be a major owner of TikTok. The third richest man owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. The fourth richest man owns the Washington Post. See the problem here." That's it for this edition of Scoop. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.